おはようございます。今日の朝のフーディニ作業配信を始めていきたいと思います。今日は、ちょっと長めのパーティクルのシミュレーションを使った作例をやってみたいと思います。ちょっとなんか、カルマの XPU があんまり調子が良くなくて、昨日試しにドライバーアップデートしてみたら、だいぶ良くなったので、ドライバーが古かったんだなという感じでした。エラーワーニングかなとかも出なくなったので、やっぱ新しい状態でやるのは大事だなと。はい。今日は動画は流すんですが、こんなのやるよといきなりちょっと始めていきます。Houdiniのバージョンは 18.5、いつも通りの 18.5 です。はい。では始めます。
Alright, so you can do Taurus. I think I was talking about earlier, like if you do this NURBS stuff, you'll get kind of like intrinsic UVs, like parametric UVs, that essentially come with this kind of shape. So basically what I mean by like that is if you have a grid, usually what I do with this grid is you do like color is that is if you have a grid, usually what I do with this grid is you do like color based off of the relative bounding box. Ideas that I've been thinking about. This is the Friday cool zone. Just the attributes. Bounding box. Ideas that I've been thinking about. I could do this attribute. Earlier, like if you do this NURBS stuff, you'll get kind of like intrinsic UVs, like parametric UVs, that essentially come with this kind of shape. So basically what I mean by like that is if you have a grid, usually what I do with this grid is you do like color based off of the relative bounding box. Then you'll just get normalized coordinates, kind of like UV attributes. So if I look at X, we have like a U coordinate.
なんかおかしかった。
And then in Z, we have like a V coordinate. I think you can do like a swizzle operation if you do that kind of thing. So this just shuffles the coordinates. So instead of X, Y, Z, the Z and Y channels are flipped or swapped around. So now I have like UV coordinates. And then if I just put my position, I can match the positions of this torus. So I can do like P equals primitive UV attribute from this auxiliary input. I want to get that surface position. For the primitive number, I can just put 0 because this is NURBS, so it's always just going to be one shape. And then for my UV coordinates or the surface coordinates, I can just use the color attribute. So this way we're wrapping the shape, we're conforming it to the sphere, or the NURBS torus, the donut. So any shape that you can have as a primitive or a NURBS shape, now we can conform this grid to it. You like where this is going? Hopefully it's going somewhere good. I'm still figuring this out as I go along, but yeah. So you do tube, you can do the radius of the tube, make a pyramid or a triangle. So basically all the simple geometric shapes, now we can conform this grid to it. You do higher resolution, you get a little bit better results. I don't know what other what else we have. I think it's just like torus, tube, sphere. Those are the only options. You can do some stuff with box and stuff like that, but it gets a little bit more advanced because it's harder to represent them as NURBS. And then as well, I think with this being NURBS, I was talking about this a little bit. If you do the carve, you can use this, I guess, to offset the parameters, but you can also use it to like remove or isolate a chunk of it. So this is still kind of isolated. If I want to, I can assign UV coordinates to this grid. So if I just do project, now we'll have UV texture attributes, and then if I do this quick shade, you can just visualize the coordinates a little bit easier with this. I don't know why, but these numbers get like flipped around sometimes. You might be able to do, I think I have to do it up here. You just switch these ranges around. Maybe not the first one. Now we have them. You can just visualize
慣れてないから。
A little bit better results. I don't know what other what else we have. We can do some stuff because it's harder to represent them as NURBS. And then as well, I think with this being NURBS, I was talking about this a little bit. If you do the carve, you can use this, I guess, to offset the parameters, but you can also use it to like remove or isolate a chunk of it. So this is still kind of isolated. If I want to, I can assign UV coordinates to this grid. So if I just do project, now we'll have UV. Texture attributes, and then if I do this quick shade, you can just visualize the coordinates a little bit easier with this. I don't know why, but these numbers get like flipped around sometimes. You might be able to do, I think I have to do it up here. You just switch these ranges around. maybe not the first one. Now we have them a little bit more readable. So now just to visualize the carve, you can do interesting like deformations or stretching and animations and stuff like that with the texture, all aspects of it sticking or staying around or whatever. And it looks like with these, you can just do a nice kind of rotation if you don't use all of them. So you can do nice kind of simple abstract or rigs, I don't know, deformations or whatever, stuff like that. You can also even do like distortions and stuff like that, I think. So if I add a number, so we'll take like the cd.x, the u channel. If I just add 0.2 to it, you'll see that it swings around a little bit. Basically, we've offset the colors, so instead of going from 0 to 1, now it's going from 0.2 to 1.2. You get this. Spreadsheet out. I don't know how easy it will be to read. This text gets a little bit small. But if we want to wrap it around so that it stays between 0 and 1, like if it goes to 1.1, if you do modulus, this will just make sure to wrap it around. So 1.1 would become 0.1 with that. The reason to do this is if we add the v coordinate or the y to x, then you can get like a twist or a stretch or something like that. You could scale the amount that you're twisting. Do interesting distortions like that as well. I don't know if we'll do, I'm just gonna leave it off for now. I'll just disable that carve, but it's cool kind of options to have in your back pocket. Some cool gems to keep hidden away. Yeah, so we'll get rid of the color maybe. We still have the UV, like the color is pretty much the UV attribute at this point. We don't need both of them. And then we'll just, we could use this to load our image. I'm just gonna set that back. We could use this to load, and then we'll just, we could use this. And then we'll just, we could use this to load our image. I'm just gonna set that back. This texture scale doesn't apply. This is like just if there aren't UV attributes, it will project using this. But because we already have UV attributes, this stuff just gets ignored. Then I'll just save this, get it into the folder. So with the hip files, I usually just make a scenes directory. I'll just do this like colored donut. Could change it later on or something, but I don't know. For now, it makes sense. And then just getting this texture, grab it from there. If you want your textures to be a relative reference or whatever, you could just do this expression like that. And then as long as I keep my files in the same folder structure and directory and stuff, we have a nice, we don't have to update these paths and stuff like that all the time. So it's pretty cool. If you go back, try some of our twists. Nice. Yeah, it's already done. We finished it. So if I start to do some distortion to it, now it looks like it's harder to see that seam. It's kind of like flowing with the rest of the stuff. It's a bit harder to see. Kind of tricked people a bit with that. It just reads like one of these other lines or something like that, and less like an artifact. We could maybe try out some other ones. I don't know. This one seems pretty well, but maybe we'll take a look at some of this other stuff. Some of these people put the little overlay over it, which is unfortunate. It ruins it. This one could be cool. It's a pretty high resolution thing. So we'll put that in the same folder. Stuff's really cool. Sorry, it looks like CG. I don't know. It's like someone painted it that way or something. I don't know. These are all getting a bit. This one's pretty cool. We'll grab that one. And maybe this one as well. This color scheme, Picasso. This color scheme reminds me of the Lenovo. It's like yoga. Forget who made it. Someone made this pretty nice animation for this thing. You guys can check it out if you want. But yeah, it was like particles. I think they might probably just use like a noise to assign this initial distribution. You could use a texture as well or something. But yeah, this stuff at the end with the stylus hitting it, shockwave and all that stuff is super cool. Kind of reminds me, somewhat similar. This looks a little bit more purple than blue with the orange-blue combination or whatever. This is what you were looking at. Yeah, so just duplicate this one out and take another look. Thing could be okay. I might be able to use this. Try to use this offset here to put the seam. Just try to hide that hemisphere kind of seam in the back, just to make it a little bit cleaner. I don't know if this one, we really twist it, then we can kind of get that other seam hidden. But I don't know. I'm not feeling this texture map too much. Let's try this other one. Some of this looks like we have some artifacts here. We could just make our source geometry a bit higher resolution before we distort it. Like if we don't have enough quads, you get some tearing or stretching or stuff like that. This is pretty cool. Maybe don't want too much stretching. This is pretty cool here with the duality, like two different bit of a yin-yang situation. Let's see, we have this. I think this one's working better. Save this scene again. Let's take a look at the last one. Bizarre. Bizarre, abstract, fluid, acrylic painting. Pretty descriptive parameter. It's maybe... This one could be pretty cool. You could do the same thing maybe with twisting it with the other direction. So instead of adding y to the x to twist in that direction, we take y and add x to that. Then we'll get twisting like around the other direction. Horizontal or vertical, basically. I don't know, because then we start to get a pretty big ripping happening there. Might be if you do it, if you twist it perfectly, like one rotation or two rotations, then we can get them to line back up. Would be nice. So I'm just dividing by 0.5. It's the same idea. It's just multiplying by 2. That way that it will do precisely one rotation. If you just do it, multiply it by 1, I guess 1 is one rotation, 2 would be 2 rotations, and then you can get them to line back up, so we don't have a seam in that direction. So I don't know, I think these are generally pretty cool, but this this one before we did the twist to Y was I think looking pretty cool. So when we were getting like the two different black, blue, sitting on opposite sides, it was pretty cool. You're basically distorting the UV coordinates with your setup, right? And use the distorted UVs for the prim UV lookup. It's kind of, it's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a distortion, but it's more of just like a scaling or a shearing or something like that. But yeah, if I just took this, instead of taking the position and putting it to the so when we were getting like the two different
開けんの？レンタービューでしか出なくない？ ション、カラーコレクションか。テーブルからこれはあるけど、こう出るな、出ないな。コンピューターとマテリアル。わかんねえ。なんだこの画面。わからんな。
Black, blue, sitting on.
何もないもんな。謎すぎる。ビューメニューだ。僕じゃないよ。これ使うのも出るんだけど。
On opposite sides, it was pretty cool. you're basically distorting the UV coordinates with your setup, right? And use the distorted UVs for the prim UV lookup. It's kind of, it's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a distortion, but it's more of just like a scaling or a shearing or something like that. But yeah, if I just took this, instead of taking the position and putting it to the surface of this input, if I do E and just set it to CD, you do wireframe, I'm just doing this kind of distortion of like just an offset or a shifting by height. So if I don't do any offset, you get that. If I wanted to, I could do this as a parameter, the channel float. I don't know, this one will be like X twist. So I'll just switch this to multiplication so it's a bit easier to understand. So basically, without this modulus, it's doing this, but it's going, like if you're using a texture, when you assign a texture to geometry, it will automatically wrap the UV coordinates to be within 0 and 1, but because this prim UV function doesn't do that, we just need to do the modulo by 1, and that just takes everything that's over here and moves it to be over there. So we can apply that, and then we have stuff that's wrapping around, and that's what happens. If you look at, this one's pretty cool. I think that's how I got here earlier. If you look at the Houdini primitive parametric spaces, this is basically the idea of how these NURBS coordinates or whatever are derived. I don't know if they talk about NURBS. I guess they don't really talk about them in that section. But basically all the NURBS geometry types will have these. I guess they do have it. NURBS, Bezier. Maybe they just don't have that section in the help. But basically, you have a 0 to 1 coordinate space for all these NURBS surfaces. So I'm just remapping the coordinates to that space or that other representation. Hopefully that makes sense. It makes a bit more clear. But yeah, I think this red and blue one is pretty nice. Pretty cool. So right now these quick shades, they don't actually change any attributes of the geometry. Like this color is just basically a quick material that is being visualized. You can do maybe attrib from map if you want to actually bake the color into the geometry. We have that one down there. So right now it's just doing that default grid. We can just copy this path and put it up here. So that's pretty cool. So I think with these, because this has a bit more advanced like texture settings. Or no, I think I still need to keep it like that. Yeah. The percent equals is basically a modulo expression. It's basically just saying do a modulo with myself and return the result. Like if you do 1 plus equals 1, you get 2. Because it's basically saying 1 equals 1 plus 1. So the modulo is a bit of a advanced kind of division type of operator. So instead of doing a division and returning the amount, it's just returning the remainder. So it's a simple way to wrap spaces around, essentially. If I just do this, Julian, how's it going? You do this pig head. Yeah, it's useful for step functions. It's useful for a lot of different things. Like if you're just repeating things or doing like pattern generation, it's pretty useful. So if I just do like primitive wrangle here, you do color equals the primnum. You just get 0, 1, 2, and it keeps going really high numbers above 1. If you do like modulo of 4, then you get 1 out of every 4 faces, where you could explicitly kind of color them if you compare it and say if that's equal to 1, then it will just be true. So I'm basically splitting this out and saying like, give me 25% of the faces or 1 out of every 4. But hopefully, I don't know if this makes it a little bit more clear, but it's really useful for doing, you just get interesting kind of like knitting or sewing, like stitching patterns this way. Yeah, so that's a good way to maybe think about it. You just do divided by, then you see that you get like a bit of a different result. We go over here to these numbers, it might, visualizing math like this would have helped me so much in high school. Yeah, I don't know, it's, I don't know if it works like that for everyone, but I would have learned math a lot easier if they actually like showed you how you could do like a knitting thing or like a twisting rope with like radians and atan too and stuff like that, instead of just like looking at these diagrams. It would have been a lot easier to understand that kind of stuff. So basically, like the division function will give you the actual value, and then the modulo will give you the remainder. So what's ever left over, essentially. Hopefully that clears it up. So I'm using it here just to wrap the space around. If I don't do it, that extra area just gets cut off, or it's actually all just kind of like stuck where it's going above 1. And then if I do this operation again, I'm basically mirroring that space and just shifting it over to stay within the 0 to 1 range so that it's able to find where it needs to go. Yeah. So this attribute from map, like it won't always give you as good of results as this. This is actually doing a shader or a material. It's a gem for sure. These gems out. Because you're using this as a shader with a texture map, you can represent more colors even within a single face. Like it's using UV coordinates to read the image from disk. This is just baking the results into the geometry. So you're constrained to the resolution of your mesh or however many points you have. So if I just want more detail, I could just up-res that. You could do the same thing with the UV project node. I think so. I'm just using this UV project here to store like some rest coordinates, but I think I might be able to do it the other way. Usually, I like to do this rel bbox. Just, I don't know, it seems a bit more like you would start to map other geometry and stuff. It might not work that well for 3D stuff, but you could do it. Yeah, you could do it some other ways as well. So I'm up-resing my grid just to be, so it can hold more color values. So if you want to actually like record the texture values into the geometry instead of just visualizing them, sometimes you need a bit more detail or subdivisions on your geometry. And then if we want this stuff on particles, or just to make it a bit more interesting, like there's different things we could do. For example, we could do like P and add the normal to it. We kind of have like the peak sop with that, just inflating the position along its surface normal. If you mask this or modulate it using the color, you could do the X component. Then we kind of have that Lenovo. Where did it go? This kind of effect where it's getting displaced. I don't know if they're using like a noise based off of the color value or using the color value directly, but this is kind of the same idea. You could maybe do some blurring to kind of refine that a little bit, just get more interesting shapes. That's pretty cool. Getting like a title, a whirlpool or something like that over there. So yeah, that's one idea of something you can do. You do CD, like a certain color channel. You can do luminance. Just do the overall brightness of the texture or of the color value. Get interesting things that way. Maybe this is a bit strong. We'd like divide, basically just doing color corrections to get different amounts. So this is what I meant saying, like doing this Lie Griggs stuff, but kind of just mapping it to geometry. You're basically, instead of just extruding boxes from it, now we're just warping it to flow along geometry or whatever. So
キロでディスプレイスしてんのか。
I don't know why that stuff happens. It might be, you might need more resolution. We could also just smooth, just kind of blur stuff down to get it kind of like anti-aliasing or blurring the result to get rid of some of that tearing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You can have a lot of control, like if you go back to the source shape, I can change the invert it, or I could do like a thinner, skinnier kind of tube or something like that to get just different shapes. You go up to a full radius, and then we also just have our other shapes, doing the sphere, doing the tube, the pyramid shaped tube. We got all of our basic shapes that we can use for interesting modeling or just composition kind of things. You could do like have a couple basic shapes that we can use for interesting modeling or just composition kind of things. You could do like have a couple cones going and get like this weird hourglass, like Doctor Strange, I don't know, fractal dimension thing. Get some weird planet operation happening. Yeah, so
ナーブスはパラメトリックな UV を持ってんだよね。で、それをUV をこれグリッドが Z エクスプレーンだから反転させてるだけだ。
take whatever this source shape is. I'm just going to keep setting this up like a kind of procedural manner, just to try to keep it like pretty flexible. I don't know, it's always nice to be able to go up and try out different different inputs and see what results you get. So let's maybe just do this points from volume. So this just fills the geometry with particles. You do this add scale attribute. This will record the p scale attribute with particles. You do this add scale attribute. This will record the p scale, and that's basically just like determined by this point separation. So if I do copy to points, and just put particles or spheres onto them, I think by default they scale it by 2. If you want them
そういうことか。
them to fit together perfectly, I think you have to do like 0.5, because it's like a radius, like diameter, I don't know. It's just depending on whatever shape you're trying to put onto things. But basically this way, like if I update it, these will always be sitting close together without intersecting. And then if I particles or spheres onto them, I think by default they scale it by 2. If you want them to fit together perfectly, I think you have to do like 0.5, because it's like a radius, like diameter, I don't know. It's just depending on whatever shape you're trying to put onto things. But basically this way, like if I update it, these will always be sitting close together without intersecting. And then if I want to, I can transfer or project the color attribute. there's a couple different ways to do it. Like one is using this attribute transfer. So this will like spatially find the nearest ones. There's kind of like a projection. Let me just go a bit bigger with the resolution. So basically just whatever the nearest color value, it will just copy that over. Maybe you can also do some stuff over here. If you do like multiple samples, it will start to blur the stuff together. I'm just going to switch this over to the disks. That might be a bit faster than like copying the spheres together. You also have the ray node. I think you can do a similar operation with this if I just do minimum distance. Then you can do import attributes from hits. So if I just do this, normally it will like
だからあ、そっか、このプロジェクトレイだと一番近いところってことか。
constrain or move all of the particles to the surface. If I turn off transform points, then it will just keep, let me turn off the guide geometry as well. Then it's just copying the color value, like it's importing the color from the nearest surface, but it's not moving the geometry at all. Let's just go maybe some more points. Seems like these These guys are getting pretty slow to cook with the amount of points that they have. But I guess it's just something that's only going to happen once, so it's not a big deal if it takes like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. It's not something that we're like reapplying every single frame. So we'll let this go. I just reduced the point separation. We should be maybe at like 2 million or 2.5 million particles now. This might take 20 or 30 seconds to run. I think part of it is because this grid is a pretty high resolution. Like we subdivided it or increased the number of divisions to be quite high, so that causes any of these transfer functions to behave pretty slow. Yeah, so it's taking like 50 seconds, close to 5 million points. You'd maybe go out of the disks mode and just back to points. It's just a little bit quicker for the viewport to display stuff that way. So it just depends. I don't know. At some point you're gonna have to do a transfer like that, and it could get pretty expensive. But if I'm just using this as like source geometry, then it's not as big of a deal because we're not like running this every frame. So maybe I'll just do the top network to make particles. This is what I might mean by the time dependent, like because this is a simulation. For whatever reason, my badge is a bit bigger. I usually just do. For whatever reason, my badge is a bit bigger. I For whatever reason, my badge is a bit bigger. I usually just do that as normal. But if you see this clock, that just means that every frame, with this update, the results will be updated. We don't have that, so it's just static geometry. Yeah, so do the source. I usually just turn off that guide because it's a bit distracting. We could just do all geometry, and then you can do this instead of 1, you can just do $simulation frame equals 1. So instead of always activating or always generating points, we just want to. So instead of $simulation frame equals 1. So instead of always activating or always generating points, we just want to generate them at the start frame of the simulation, or the first simulation frame. And you can just do a noise, like a noise force. So we'll plug that in. and we just get this uniform kind of like distortion, curl noise or whatever happening. I might be able to maybe turn that turbulence down, make the swirl size bigger, so we just have this like lower frequency noise. That's pretty cool. I'm just gonna switch this over for a second. I'm just gonna scatter points on the surface of the geometry. So we just have less points, and it should be quicker to. To run all this stuff. So now I'm just able to kind of operate in real time, something closer to it. So that's somewhat interesting, but it's not, it just looks very basic, because it's like a curl noise. We can do this Vex Expressions. This will let you can override or change these noise settings now using Vex or Vex Expressions, like simple kind of point properties or stuff like that. Like if I did the amplitude amp and mask it or multiply it, like the P, the position, the X component of the position is greater than 0, then we can just apply the forces to half of things. So it's easier to animate, or you have more control over this noise instead of just like a global setting that gets applied to all the points the same way. That's pretty cool. You could do this offset is a nice one to use, because this lets you kind of distort, or you can do stretch the noise in interesting ways. So if I add, this is like 4 components to it. It's like X, Y, Z, and W, or time is the last one. So instead of just adding 0 to all of those, if I add like the red channel, then you start to like distort. So instead of the noise being perfectly smooth, you are basically like offsetting or distorting the noise using the color value. You can multiply it or scale it to depend like how much stretching. Like too much is just too high of a frequency. If we just multiply it by 0.2, then we just have some subtle kind of distortion or extra little details kind of being added to it. That's pretty cool. So I might do maybe mask the amplitude by the color. Maybe we'll do the Z component, or like the blue channel. So this way we're changing the frequency or the offset of the, not really the frequency, but we're just distorting the noise using the red channel, and then we're changing the strength of the noise based off of the blue channel. So it will just become more impactful for the blue areas of the color. Might go back up here, just make some more points. We'll just get this a bit more filled in. We're doing 1 million. Should still be pretty fast to operate. The scatter, initial scatter takes some time to do this relax iterations, but some time to do this relax iterations. But you can see we're still getting pretty fast performance. So now we're just able to get a lot more like dynamic or interesting results from the particles. So instead of that uniform undulation, it's just a lot more interesting to have kind of differentiations of smooth and blurry or like really, I don't know, diffuse areas. Yeah, it just looks a lot cooler. So maybe, yeah, it's an interesting abstract. You just keep adding noise or distorting your noise with every parameter. You like cross all the wires together until you get interesting results, kind of. Kind of like doing music. Like if you ever played with a synthesizer, you kind of just have all these signals that you're like feeding into each other until you get like weird like feedback loops or weird things that are driving other things that sound interesting or in this case look interesting. So maybe instead of my offset just being with the red channel, I'll do luminance and just do the brightness of the color. I'm gonna try maybe doing a smaller swirl size. That's just like the overall scale or frequency of the noise. This is kind of cool. It's like water and then land or terrain or lava, I don't know, something a bit more rigid. Maybe we'll do some drag just to kind of keep stuff a little bit under control. The drag is kind of just adding like thickness to the air. So pieces, little particles don't fling off as easily. Instead of moving through a vacuum or like anti-gravity, the drag is kind of like it's moving through a thicker medium or like quicksand or something that's just a little bit more resistance to travel through. I think this kind of form and everything is feeling pretty nice. Let's maybe just move forward with this. Maybe I'll go back to the slow. Slower one to cook. So this is 5 million particles with this one that exist on the inside as well. And then this one I was just placing points on the surface so it would run a bit quicker. But this way we're able to apply everything to kind of a solid form. We won't see as many gaps as the stuff like gets pulled apart. So even on the insides, we still have points or stuff happening. let me, I'm just rethinking.
そっか、ボリュームだからか。
This pretty quickly. So I think maybe if I just do poly extrude. I'm just going to use this to make some thickness, kind of like VDB works or something, where you're just simulating like a bandwidth. This is kind of like the sparse narrow band on the flip fluid, where you're just simulating a certain distance to VDB works or something, where you're just simulating like a bandwidth. This is kind of like the sparse narrow band on the flip fluid, where you're just simulating a certain distance to the surface instead of all of the interior. And this poly extrude is converting from NURBS to polygons. It will only operate on polygons, so it's something to be careful about. And then it looks like this is not picking up. And it looks like this is not picking up my shape properly. I don't know if I need to do... Maybe I need to... switch this method. VDB from particles. Let me see what happens. So with this, I don't know if it's the normals. I was thinking that that might be it, but I think it might just be that the way that this stuff gets constructed, the normals might be fuck. So if I just do reverse, like you were seeing that the normals were just pointing the
カオスすぎるな。
wrong direction. I don't think that that's the case. I think that just like the way that this node constructs things, it doesn't know about a shell. No worries. It doesn't know whether it's like a shell or inside. It's just basically like looking at the outside of the shape, and it's not smart enough to figure that out. So what I'm doing here, like, I guess this might not be the best way to do it. Let me just do, this is going to be easier to understand. So you can just do VDB from polygons to make it the main shell. And then if I just do the reshape, instead of dilate, erode. So this is kind of like the poly extrude, pulling stuff in or out. It's kind of like a peak sop. Then if you do combine, then I can do it.
やべ、早すぎてついていけなくなってきた。ちょっと
the main shell, and then if I just do the reshape, instead of dilate, erode. So this is kind of like the poly extrude, pulling stuff in or out. It's kind of like a peak sop. Then if you do combine, then I can do like intersection as
待てよ。これが元の形状で、そして、インターセクションで削ったってことは、中身を削ったのか。この数は変わってんの？減ってるか。57、27、こことここ同じだな。
Where they overlap, difference is would include the shell. So if I look,
インターセクションだと。
me convert to you can use you can use that convert SOP. We should go to the normal one, convert PDB. And then I'll just use this thing to do it. Like a cross section, clips up. So we're still getting the shell, but it's defined inside of the volume. So I think if I do it like this, and then I set this.
やっと減った。
Sign distance. Maybe this one isn't smart.
Distance. ああ。
Smart enough to me just try one more thing. So if I do fog, I'm just going to convert the VDB from SDI.
VDB に変えるの。スティールという方が。
Yeah, the fog. So now we have it density volume. All right.
SDF だとサインディスタンスフィールドでポイントができて、でフォーにしてあげると、おお、さらに減った。
We did it. We tricked him into doing what we wanted it to do. If we wanted to get rid of some of the kind of artifacts, I think we can just do like a bit of smoothing. It also might just not be smoothing. It also might just not be, we might not be offsetting this enough. So now I think it's a little better. So I'm basically doing like the same particle separation size, but instead of making 5 million, now I'm just making 1 million. So I could even go like a bit lower in point separation. Go like a bit lower in point separation. I don't know why it's still having trouble. Let me think about this. You also have this VDB visualize tree. You could use this to create a point. From each voxel, this one might be a bit better to switch to. So if I do resample,
VDB むず。
using voxel size, this is kind of like doing points from volume. So I have the same slider here that I can do, kind of set my point separation. It should just be a bit more stable. I'm not sure what they're doing inside of that. That was kind of being a bit weird. We might get some stair stepping that way, so I'm just going to control it. Stair stepping that way, so I'm just going to control it using up this voxel size at the source. We should be okay with that. So we have 2 million particles now, but they're all just sitting at the surface. And I think we can just continue on with that.
全然制御できてないな。なんでだ。
So we did a little brief diversion, but hopefully you can see the benefits. We have a lot more speed when we're simulating stuff. I might be able to even go down a bit smaller with this stuff.
めっちゃシミュレーション早くなったな。めちゃくちゃ速くなったんだが。すごい。ちょっと待って。すごい。何これ。速くなりすぎでは。 ああ、そっか、今 SDF でやってるからか。192万。で、192万になって、固まっちゃってんな。まあ、めっちゃ速くなったような気がしたけど、そこまででもないか。まあでも速くはなったな。
So I'm basically still able to have some thickness, but I can have a lot of definition or detail when this stuff rips apart. So basically, we took that diversion just to make it so that we have this kind of bandwidth, but we're still not putting any particles in that empty area. But when we render it or do stuff like that, it should still appear to be like a solid shape, pretty much. We need more spacing, or more. If you're starting to see through it, you might want to go in and like change the bandwidth or this reshape. But I think this is working better. Just because before I was like losing some of these spikes and some nice like high frequency detail. I wanted to keep that because it was really making this look like a crashing wave or something that I really wanted to keep. Yeah, so that looks pretty cool. One thing we need to be careful about is that this one isn't assigning p-scale to stuff. So you can just do maybe like attribute create and so you can just do maybe like attribute create and set a p-scale using this. And then I'm just gonna link the voxel size. So just do copy parameter, p-scale, and the value will be linked to that. And then this way, if I go into here and switch to disks,
あれか。デバッグ用かな。
I'm visualizing the P scale that way by the disk size. So if I turned it off, it might ruin my viewport performance, but basically you'd see these go up to a unit or pretty big because the points wouldn't have a P scale attribute yet. I'm just going to go back to points. It's just a bit quicker when you have a ton of points to do it this way. Let's just make a camera. And
ディスク表示重いな。
do a redshift lights. So I've pinned my viewport or the camera or whatever to the light. I'm also just going to go in here and get the redshift render view.
この下のエリアが出ないんだよな。なんでだろう。
I'm just going to try to do like a quick rim light. So we have the camera on the other side, and we'll just do
カメラがここにある。
like our light is like a glancing angle kind of thing. I think you usually just do like the backslash button is like the hotkey to jump between the previous and last thing that you're viewing. Jump between the previous and last thing that your view was set to or constrained to. Just gonna move this. You just go into world space now and keep moving this stuff around a little bit.
調整するのかい。こんなもんか。
I was just worried that this rim was going to be like a little too aggro. Like directly behind stuff is just is too too much of a rim. It's like you only see the edge basically. Yeah. So we just go into here under redshift. We'll do particles. Do the P scale, and then this way is just optimized way for redshift to do a bunch of spheres. If we want to test, you just do this preview IPR button. So even now the rim is a bit might
おい、マジか。マジで言ってる。おっと、これはまずい。どうしようかな。一回切るか。あれ、レッドシフトのアカウント忘れたぞ。いや、ダメか。やべえ、サインができねえ、レッドシフトに。 うしようかな。マックスオンアカウント忘れた。あった。あれ、これもまだダメかな。サインしたけど。来た。
Might even still be too aggressive, but I'll just leave it here for now. Boost the light. And if I go to the redshift ROP, just turn on diffuse bounces. This will just help the light lead a little bit more to the front of the object. It can like bounce around and just penetrate. Through the form a little bit. I'm just gonna go back into that light. Keep this guy looking through. The camera. We'll just start to move it. Now we have some more of this detail. This thing here is a bit unfortunate. I don't know. Let's try. Moving over here, maybe the other side. Could be better. Something like that, starting to be pretty interesting. We'll stop the render and get a shader going. And we want the point colors, so we need to get the particle attribute. How many lights would you plan to use on something like this? It depends a lot with the look you're going for. I don't know. We look at this, some of this stuff here. Like this might just be a HDRI, like a pretty diffuse, a constant value. I'm kind of planning to maybe just go more rim. I try not to really go like higher than 3. Even 3 sometimes is like a bit too much. I don't know. I mean, it's like the classic 3-point lighting setup, but sometimes it's nice to have like a lot of dark, mysterious area. But it depends a lot on just like the reference or what kind of like lighting style you're looking to replicate. So you might want, the default material is like plastic, but the roughness is like perfectly reflective. I usually make it a bit blurry. The rest should be okay. We'll do, the rest should be okay. It a bit is like perfectly reflective. I usually should be okay. We'll do, try to apply it. I think my OBS doesn't like me doing that for whatever reason. Let's see if it worked. It did not. So I'll just assign it this way. And now we can do another render. We should see the colors. We do. So yeah, so lighting, I mean, I usually like to just stick with one, and then looks like you can see the corner of it. You can just turn off visibility there. Sometimes you could do like normalize intensity. This way you can make it bigger without everything getting like overexposed.
サイズがちっちゃいか。 来てたから。おかしい。なんだこれ。なんで他の軸まで置いてんのこれ。ビューで動いてたのか。おかしい。けに暗いな。なんて言うんだろう。真上から照らしてみるか。 ライトが綺麗にいかないな。この視点めちゃくちゃ操作しにくいんだよな。ライトがいて。カメラがここにあるんだから。カメラがあそこにあった。で、今カメラどこにあるこれ。で、こっちにあんだよ。ちょっと。 無限に調整してしまう。やめよう。
So this is just like a softer, it's like a bigger box light someone might have on set or something like that. Basically like reducing the contrast in things. Maybe something like that. And then usually before adding more lights, what I'll do is go in with these grids and use them like the bounce cards. So if I just leave it here, like basically what this is doing is reflecting some light back onto things. So I'm going to get out of the light, unlock it, and then if I just move this to be on the other side of things, like you can already see that it's kicking a bunch of bounce light. It's almost too much light. Let me go back to the camera view. So there's a few different, I don't know why sometimes that doesn't update. I think just for any good resource on learning lighting, like you can even just do photography or look at photography tutorials for a lot of good lighting tips. There's one book I think I have, or maybe Illuminated Pixels. This one's about like digital lighting. There's some good breakdowns and stuff that they talk about in it. But I don't know, I mean, like some of this stuff is a bit outdated because it has to do with older renderers where people weren't using this like bounce lighting technique as much with them just because it was like computationally expensive. There's this this one that I have here, Light, Science and Magic. This one has these kind of ideas that I'm doing here with like bounce cards and stuff like that. This is more from a like product photography kind of perspective. Like it's less to do with computer graphics and more of just a general lighting kind of thing. That was the one you just yeah, I think that's better. Like I don't even think that I ended up getting that Illuminated Pixels one. Yeah. Yeah, so that's I would just start with that Light, Science and Magic. That's a pretty good one for just like the basics and stuff like that. Let's get the size of this bounce card. You can get like, it's basically changing the intensity of that reflected light. So now we just have this subtle kind
カメラと同じ。こっちだ。
Kind of stuff happening. I'm gonna move camera around. Maybe just try this classic default framing. You could do like maybe just overall intensity of everything. Then we'll just get more bounce lighting and more I don't know, rim or whatever you want to call that. Maybe I'll try another light. I'm just going to put another one here. And I don't know why this redshift is... Whoops. Alright. Doing too much. Turn that off. I need to go into the redshift thing and do a redshift light, and then I'm gonna go back to my camera. Yeah, I got ahead of myself.
ダメ
And
だ、このライティングの調整を見てたら無限に時間がかかりそうだ。一旦ここまでとしますかね。はい。一旦今日の配信はだいぶ長くなってきたので、ここまでとしようと思います。結構パーティクルのセットアップ周りで、ボリュームからやったり、ポリゴンからやったり、なんかいろいろ結構盛りだくさんな感じでした。まあでも肝はここでマッピングをしたところですかね。誰か来たけど帰ってった。UV のプリミティブの UV かにカラーをマッピング。プリミティブの UV からカラーを取ってきて、ポジションに突っ込んでんだ。で、できて、戻してマッピングしてんのか。で、それを P に戻してんのか。結構 UV は苦手な分野なので、ちょっと理解がまだちゃんと追いついてないですが、まあでもトーラスをタイプをナーブスにしたあたりとかもまあポイントでしたね。自分だったら普通に多分ここでアトリビュートフローマップで色を移した後、カラーをテクスチャーから設定した後にスキャッターしてっていうセットアップにしそうなんですが、こっちのセットアップだと、まあ、レイで移して多分中までカラーをマッピングしてるんだと思うんですけど、まあ、レイのここのミニマムディスタンスの設定を変えるっていうのもまあポイントだったかなと。まあ、結構いろいろこうやったらできるよみたいので、だいぶ脱線しまくってた動画だったので、なんかやってて途中混乱しましたが、まあ、応用が効きやすそうなセットアップかなと思います。はい。では、今日の配信はこれで終了したいと思います。ご視聴ありがとうございました。